there anything that makes you feel nostalgic? I don't mean regular nostalgia, but something that just the thought of it transports you back to your childhood instantly? Just a glimpse of it will make you instantly remember what it feels like to be a kid. No worries in the world, no bills to pay, the infinite possibilities of what kind of amazing life you'd lead. Yeah, I wish I could slap some sense into that optimistic little brat too. But this goes beyond, oh, remember silly bands, or I remember when Pixar made good movies. This is something that brings you to your knees in tears like a blithering moron just by hearing the opening theme. Maybe yours was Drake and Josh, Hannah Montana, iCarly, but for me, it's Sonic Heroes. I'd be willing to bet that you don't openly tell people that hearing the intro to Sweet Life of Zack and Cody gets you emotional and brings you back to a better time, but behind closed doors, you'll blast that shit at full volume. Well, these aren't closed doors, but it's about time someone said it. Now, this may be a very biased look at a game that many consider broken, unfinished, and otherwise janky and unplayable, but I want to shed some light on the things that people may have missed. This is an apologetic look at
Sonic Heroes.
The idea that Sonic had a rough transition into 3D has been beaten over your head too many times to count. And while I feel that many people have made their defenses clear for the likes of SA1 and especially SA2, well, that's where it seems to end for the Blue Blur. While most have seen through the cynicism of game critics and begun to praise the early 3D titles for their respective qualities, I still don't find many people coming to bat for their 6th-gen installments. SA1 will go down in history for its innovations in 3D high-speed platforming, showing an astonishingly detailed transposition of the classic elements into a 3D perspective, with its open-ended level designs, vast array of characters, and multi-contextual storyline. And SA2 redefined what a 3D Sonic game is and streamlined the formula with character-specific levels and a much more grounded plot. But I hardly see anyone shouting their praises for Heroes, which, in my opinion, is the most over-hated Sonic game of all time. Now, there are many criticisms of this game, some valid and some, well...
Yeah.
When we started...
No.
This must be... Yeah.
Most of the complaints I hear about this game actually happen to be misunderstandings of the fundamental design philosophy of Sonic Heroes. This game gives you more control and options than any Sonic game to date, but most people aren't aware of many of its mechanics. Nearly every death is preventable, almost every control issue can be circumvented, and the entire game structure is actually quite nice when viewed through a different lens. Let's be real here, this game is not nice to newcomers. But can we really argue that Sonic was ever meant to be played once and once only? The entire design philosophy is the more you replay and learn these levels, the faster you go and the more powerful you feel. This is a blatant misconception I hear far too often. It's a Sonic game. Shouldn't I be going fast? Well, no. The point is you have the opportunity to go fast, but the higher your skill level, the faster you go. And this applies extremely well to Heroes, but we'll get there soon enough. Let's address the development hell that was this game. It's no secret that Sonic Heroes had an abhorrent development cycle, something Sega just never learned their lessons from. This game marked a new point in the series, being the first main title to be released on multiple consoles, including the GameCube, marking the end of the tense console rivalry between Sega and Nintendo seen in the 90s. Developing for multiple consoles meant the team had to make everything from scratch using a new engine known as Renderware, which you might recognize as it was the same engine used for Battle for Bikini Bottom, The Simpsons game, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. This development hell and time crunch led the level designers to bend over backwards to finish the game before launch. And oh yeah, by the way, there were only 2 level designers for the whole game, one of which being Takashi Iizuka, saying that later in development, his other designer got so sick that he couldn't continue working on it, and it was all left to him to complete all the stages on his own. This allegedly resulted in Iizuka losing over 20 pounds and suffering from insomnia in the process. I always felt like Sega had more of an issue with under-hiring than they do with time constraints. I mean, yes, a lot of Sonic games have been rushed, but even Frontiers with its rather long development cycle still feels unfinished in many cases. So, with all these problems in mind, Sega was still determined to push this game in a new direction and make something that would appeal to everyone. And you might be thinking, well, if the game was rushed and the lead designer nearly died trying to finish the game, then how could it possibly be any good? Well, I'll tell you, but don't rush me. There's a lot to cover, and you're gonna have to sit there and listen to a man in his 20s tell you why a kid's game is better than you think it is. So let's talk about the gameplay. This game, like the adventure titles, emphasizes different character stories to progress. This time around, you have 4 teams to select from. Team Sonic, which is the normal difficulty, Team Dark, the hard mode of the game, Team Rose, the easy mode, and Team Chaotix, which are, interesting. I understand that playing the game 4 times can be annoying to some, but I would argue it doesn't hamper the experience either way you slice it. On one hand, you find the game janky and didn't have much fun playing your Team Sonic playthrough. Well, great! You don't have to keep playing beyond that point. But if you had a great time, then replaying the levels with a different set of characters under a new difficulty and with altering layouts shouldn't be a chore. Remember, this was back in 2003, when games were squeezed for every minute of playability they were worth. There was no DLC, and no promise of a new game for at least 3 years. Given this content is only mandatory to fight the final boss, I see no issue with it. Let's get started with the first set of stages, Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace. Most people who played Heroes don't really have a problem here. In fact, most people only take issue with the game for its later stages, but we'll get there soon enough. In Seaside Hill, you see your character travel through a vibrant oceanfront, scaling massive hills, jumping sandy islands, and encountering enemies along the way. This is one of the criticisms I've heard all too often about this game, people who say the egg pawns are a boring enemy type, and it gets repetitive seeing them copied and pasted through the whole game. I can see where they're coming from. But no, I can't. Because this completely ignores the fact that not only are their designs altered to fit the theme of certain stages, but they introduce all kinds of enemies in other stages that fit their themes. Like these wizard robots in Hang Castle, spiked robots in Power Plant, neon bunny bots in Casino Park, or these Happy Meal toys in Egg Fleet. And it may not be as varied as SA1, but it fits the vibe of SA2, where some of the enemies repeat the whole game and others fit the level theme. This is where I'm going to set aside time to appreciate the overall level aesthetics and design. The Whale Island can be seen in the background for the entire level, but it's actually a physical set piece at the end that you travel through and land on before completing the level. It's even referenced in later levels. This is just one of many examples of this game's continuity with structure, but I want to point it out now. In fact, the entire design of this level is amazing. It offers just enough of a skill ceiling so experienced players can swap characters and pull off crazy maneuvers with lightning speed, but a low enough skill floor so even beginners don't suffer too hard and learn how to use the character swapping mechanic at a slower pace. This mechanic is fundamental to Sonic Heroes, and I might find these constant tutorial signs to be a bit redundant at times, but it seems even adults are having trouble with this mechanic, so I suppose they were onto something. Once you develop the muscle memory for it, it provides some of the most intricate platforming and combat ever seen in a Sonic game. At the aforementioned Whale Island, you're given a Team Blast power-up. This move can be obtained by collecting rings, killing enemies, or just generally messing around. You can also glitch it by swapping to another character at the same frame as you Thundershoot with your flight character, but we'll talk about how useful that is when we get to the later levels. This move acts as a screen nuke and wipes out any enemy in a nearby radius with ease. After we finish that, on to Ocean Palace. Harkening back to the classic, Sonic Heroes levels come in pairs, an Act 1 and Act 2 of each zone, and like Sonic 3, each act has a unique song playing during it. What's even better is in this game, the levels tend to progress from one section of a setting to another. For instance, in Seaside Hill, you're running around the outside sections of a beach and jumping islands, or in Ocean Palace, you're infiltrating these rustic ruins and breaking barriers to get deep inside the palace, even jumping on the backs of giant sea turtles and running from giant rocks that are rolling towards you. This carries on the whole game, where in the final stages you're jumping on Eggman's airships and destroying them, to jumping into his massive battleship, the Final Fortress, to take it down. This is level design I'm looking for in a Sonic game. After Ocean Palace, we get to our first boss fight. It's nothing special, just us battling against Eggman's mech, which I won't make any jokes about. If you wait for it to reach these small islands, it'll drop down so you can wail on it until it's destroyed. Just use Knuckles, you'll be fine. Alright, you want to talk about Knuckles? We'll talk about Knuckles.
And Shorty got the fatty.
A lot of people seem to have an issue with him sliding all over the place when he punches, and I do think it's a bit overboard, but there are multiple attacks that circumvent this issue. You can jump in the air and use Sonic and Tails as projectiles, and it gets the job done with no sliding. Or, you can keep the control stick still and just mash the attack button, and you'll punch in short bursts to kill an enemy in one spot. This is the method you should use for this boss. This is one of 3 boss types, which for some reason they brought back in Sonic Colors. Luckily here, it does require some effort to win. On to the next levels.
Grand Metropolis!
power plant. These stages have your team infiltrating Eggman's energy plants, where I'm left to assume he uses this energy to power his robots or ships. Maybe this is where he converts animal energy into battery power, though no animals are seen in this game like they were in previous titles. These two levels ooze classic Sonic themes with their nature versus machines aesthetic, not to mention how breathtaking some of these views can be for a game made in 2003. It's here that you're taught how to use the light dash, the tornado jump, and how to grind on rails, which has been brought back from SA2. They're just as janky in this game, but now they lose the balance mechanic in favor of just tilting and crouching to manage your speed. Kinda like a lot of the classic skating games at the time, where if you crouch down, you'll gain speed down a hill. People do tend to have a lot of issues with rails in this game, which is a big problem because one of the levels later completely revolves around this mechanic. Same goes for the light dash, which functions the same here as it did in SA2. You see the B button prompt, press it to dash along a trail of rings. 9 times out of 10, I see people mess up this maneuver in one of two ways. Either they accidentally do the tornado attack, which shares the same button, or they'll dash the completely wrong direction and miss the trail of rings. And I'm not here to say the mechanic is implemented flawlessly, but I feel it works just as often, if not more so, than Adventure 2. At least in this game, you don't end up bouncing into a bottomless pit. For all those who are struggling, I have a surefire way to guarantee that the light dash works for you every time. It's pretty simple. Make sure you're facing the direction the rings are lined up, and then jump before performing it. Something about being airborne in this game makes the light dash just work every time. And after learning this, I have not had a single issue using it. In fact, there are a lot of hidden mechanics in this game that make it marginally easier to play. The previously mentioned tornado attack is a lifesaver. Not only does it grant you extra height and distance, but if the jump button is held down, you float even higher and can chain it with the air dash to cover a lot of ground. This move can save you almost any time you fall off a platform. It's introduced here to show you that you can disarm enemies with shields or hard exteriors, and also swing up these long poles. One interesting addition to this game is the level up system, where passing through checkpoints or killing enemies levels up your character from 0 to 3. And when Sonic gets to level 3, he can perform the offensive traits of the tornado just by doing a simple air dash, meaning at level 3, Sonic can disarm and kill enemies in one hit, and can swing up these poles without having to wait for the tornado animation to play out. Something most people don't know is, you can achieve these shortcuts without leveling him up. This game replaces the spin dash with a new move called the Rocket Excel. You hold down the B button until Tails and Knuckles are behind you, and you press it again for them to push you forward with a burst of speed. This attack also has the traits of the tornado, and can be used to disarm enemies and attach to poles. And remember, this is just one mechanic, for one character, and I've practically already gone on a lecture just to explain it. Trying to explain Sonic Heroes to people who haven't played it is kinda like explaining D&D rules to your grandmother. It would take forever, they'll fall asleep halfway through, but damn, you really want them to know! One thing I appreciate about the level design of Power Plant is that you can bypass most of the combat if your platforming skills are great. Most of the sections here in Power Plant where you have to kill a bunch of enemies to progress can be skipped with quick thinking and character swaps and use of the mechanics. Unfortunately, this would be the last game so far in the series to use momentum as a form of level progression. And I absolutely love it here. Jumps carry their momentum, and you can pair this with Sonic's Tornado or Tails' Flight to cover some insane ground. Using these tactics makes the level a breeze. Now to just nail this lava section that's every Let's Player's kryptonite, and we're on to the second boss.
Gotcha, my darling Sonic.
Amy, what are you doing here?
Sonic, this time there's no way out of marrying me.
So, yeah, I'm not gonna say this game has a great story, or great dialogue, or even coherent sentences some of the time, but the characters' voices and general attitude is just so lovable I can't complain. Sonic and Knuckles especially, having what I think are their best voice performances in the entire series.
Are you playing with that girl's heart again, Sonic?
Marriage? No way!
And I can't help but smile every time they bicker back and forth throughout the levels.
Hey, let's try firing that thing. Hey, come on now. Don't do it, Sonic.
That must be Eggman's base straight ahead of us.
All right, here we go. Ah!
Yeah! Too cool.
These secondary boss fights are team battles, and no, the story doesn't explain why these characters are fighting. It more so just makes them angry for no reason at each other, and boom, there they are. With the exception of Team Chaotix later in the game, but we'll get there.
Excuse me, miss. I was wondering if I could ask you something. A little brat?
Yay!
The idea is to employ a sort of rock, paper, scissors mentality, where some characters are weaker to or stronger than others. Unfortunately, this didn't pan out, and you can just win these in under 20 seconds by spamming the tornado. I have no defense for these, other than Sonic games have never really gotten character battles right, so I wouldn't bat an eye here. Alright, now we're getting into the good stuff. These next 4 levels are where most people say Heroes falls apart. There's the casino levels, where people have problems with the slippery and counterintuitive controls on the pinball tables, and the rail grinding levels, where most take issue with the bottomless pits and janky rail grinding mechanics. The odd thing is, I actually think these are some of the best levels in the game. When it comes to the pinball levels, yeah, there's no denying the control is bad. You don't ever seem to go the direction you're aiming, and things tend to move way too quickly, and you end up bouncing all over the place, completely at the mercy of the game's controls. That is, until you pay attention to these arrows. They not only direct you where you need to proceed, but actually dash you straight towards the beaten path. And it's not perfect, but once I make my way to these dash paths, I almost never have too much trouble going forward. Luckily, most of these pinball tables can be skipped, or at least have tons of shortcuts to be taken. This goes back to the design of Power Plant, where good timing and character swapping can skip many monotonous sections, pretty similar to the top and bottom paths in most classic Sonic games. I will say up front, I think Casino Park is the worst level in the game. I don't hate it, but it showcases these poor controls with nothing to alleviate the pain other than the stunning art direction. Luckily, it's actually the shortest level in the game, being beaten in under 3 minutes without glitches. Bingo Highway is a completely different beast, however. The gimmick here is you roll down these slides as opposed to being asked to move upwards on the tables. This makes progression a lot more concise and easy to achieve. Your goal is to collect as many of these bingo chips as possible to get extra rings, and I love this mechanic. And pairing it with the hectic chiptune music always gets me excited. The biggest problem people have here is the final bingo slide, where the controls barely function to keep you from death even if you try your best. This is unforgivable, but also completely avoidable. If you enter the last section as just one character, leaving your other teammates behind, they'll stay planted, and you'll immediately swap back to their position if you die. This practically gives you infinite chances to win without the fear of losing a life. It's not perfect, but at least it's preventable. Also, a lot of people are too caught up in the stress of not dying, I feel nobody even knows you can find Eggman's money supply here. I mean, I always wondered how he got the funding for his air fleet and army of robots. Turns out he's making a lot of it from gamblers losing money at his giant outer space casino. Listen, it makes sense, okay? Look, I knew Eggman was evil, but owning a casino is just next level bad. Shame on you, Eggman. Side note, I love that Sonic is just so immediately ready to take all of Eggman's money without a second thought.
This must be where Eggman keeps all his money.
In that case, I guess we can help ourselves.
It's little lines like this that make me miss when Sonic had a little bit of attitude. Ah, Rail Canyon, Rail Canyon, Rail Canyon. Sorry, but can we appreciate how this game handles level themes? Okay, a casino level, but you're 10 miles in the air navigating giant pinball tables and bingo slides. And yeah, this is a desert canyon level, but you're 10 miles in the air grinding razor-thin rails, being launched out of cannons and destroying Eggman's freight trains. Just think of the sheer amount of economic disruption Sonic is doing to Eggman's practice. Shutting down his energy plant, stealing his money, disrupting his supply line, smashing his Happy Meal toys, it just keeps getting better.
Select a memory card. Select a file. Adventure mode. Start your adventure here. Trial mode. You get to play one stage. Select your character. How to play as that hedgehog. How to play as that fat cat.
Hold the damn crouch button when going downhill on grind rails. Yes, the button prompt is flashing, but that doesn't mean spam the button. I'm not mad at newcomers for not knowing this, but people who have seen Master Final Rush in SA2 just seemingly forgot this mechanic when playing Heroes.
Burn and suffer and scream and die an endless death.
There are 2 sections that always kill me watching Let's Players. The train race segment in Rail Canyon, and the ending laser section in Final Fortress. Sure, you tap the B button to accelerate when moving slowly or going uphill, but just like bending your knees on a skateboard, you gain momentum when moving downhill. This is how the train race is supposed to look. And this is how everyone seems to do it. Also, please quit haphazardly swapping rails at blistering speeds when the rails aren't even on the same vertical plane. This never worked in SA2. It actually works much better here, but seems like everyone's throwing rocks through Hero's window trying to cancel it.
2, 4, 6, 8. Sonic Heroes. The crime was very great. Great.
Great, meaning large or immense. We use it in the pejorative sense.
Where am I going with this? I love Rail Canyon and Bullet Station. I think this is the last time where rails were fun in a Sonic game. So many things. I love that these background rails for other trains can be traversed if you leave the beaten path. I love how in Bullet Station you destroy Eggman's trains. I like how you get shot out of these Looney Tunes looking cannons and gather items in these valleys. I love how you blow up Eggman's face. Twice! Even these little things, like if you swap to Knuckles inside this cannon, you can actually shoot through the door and skip the outside section entirely. You tell me any other Sonic game where level themes are implemented this way into the level design. Alright, you want to talk about the bobsled? Let's talk about the damn bobsled.
Who am I? Christopher Wallace.
Some lasers come straight out of nowhere and it can be a pain in the ass not to die here. If only there were a mechanic to slow down the bobsled to see what's ahead of you better. Oh wait, there is! So, the bobsled has a set speed. If you hold forward, you go even faster, but if you hold the B button, you put on the brakes. You could literally hold this the whole time and never have an issue. So these levels are set up to be the climactic infiltration of Eggman's base, but that would make the game too short, so this is really the halfway point. This is where you learn that Eggman isn't actually the menace behind the world-ending escapade. Metal Sonic has made a return from Sonic CD and has taken a new form, Neo Metal Sonic. This design is awesome, and I wish it'd be brought back, because in future games Metal still takes on the look of classic Sonic, which just doesn't look intimidating next to the big lanky boy we play as today. And after fighting the Egg Albatross, which is just the Egg Hawk attached to a blimp, attached to a military craft, you see that Eggman you've been fighting all along is just a robot.
It's a fake?
Used as a disguise for Metal Sonic to obtain the powers of each team. This is where you see the final level looming over you. Eggman's air fleet is taken over the sky and being used to, well, I don't know. Are these ships actively killing people on the ground? Doubtful since this game is rated E. Nonetheless, it looks fucking awesome, and the fact that you'll be taking these ships down well above the Earth's atmosphere at the end of the game is so cool. I don't think I've ever seen another Sonic game where the end levels are shown in the intro and in some of the scenes in the game. Pretty sweet. I always wondered what happened after the ending shot of Egg Fleet, and they literally just show you when you boot up the game. And naturally, after leaving the desert, you end up in a damp rainforest. Now, I have no idea what this has to do with Eggman or Metal Sonic, but my guess is it was just on the way to the launching point for Eggman's ships, so I'll suspend my disbelief. Frog Forest and Lost Jungle are a breath of fresh air after the gimmick-heavy levels earlier, going back to the standard platforming, but now implementing grinding with these growing vines. The gimmick here is these frogs. In Frog Forest, the green frogs will summon rain when they see you and make elements of the level blossom, like vines to grind on, leaves to land on, and fruit to bounce on. In Lost Jungle, they're replaced with these black frogs that summon poison rain and kill the foliage around you, limiting level progression.
There's that black frog again.
It's a neat gimmick that leads to strategic platforming, and I love it. Not much to say here, but I've heard people insist that you can outgrind these growing vines.
And
Yeah,
I think it's also possible to overshoot this thing if
Yeah.
you're not fast enough. If you're too fast.
Yeah.
It becomes very clear that you can't do that. Even if the vine animation doesn't catch up, the rail collision's already been loaded in. I love how in Frog Forest you can take advantage of your surroundings to take multiple pathways. But not even pathways, but just kind of explore the open area and find goodies and shortcuts. This is what I was missing from SA1, and I wish there was more of it in modern Sonic games. Lost Jungle introduces these large enemies with massive health bars. Don't worry though, just still mash with Knuckles and they'll be gone in seconds. Actually, you don't even have to fight them here, more so just being introduced so you can learn the attack patterns, but not actually needing to kill them to move on. I don't have too much else to add about these two stages, except for at the end of Lost Jungle, there's this alligator chase section, and it's kind of tricky to figure out the timing, but I'll just say wait till you're at the height of the arc of the swing, and then jump, and you'll be fine. So reaching the end, we encounter our second team battle, Team Dark. So Shadow is magically back to life after dying in SA2, and Sonic doesn't even bat an eye.
Talk about being stubborn and full of surprises.
Knuckles even makes a rather dark joke about it being Shadow's ghost just to scare Tails.
Maybe that's the ghost of Shadow we saw earlier.
Okay, this is one place where I feel the lack of story in this game can be a little confusing. They do their best to explain Shadow returning with the possibility that he's just a clone made by Eggman, something that won't be answered until the next game, so thank God for that. The good news is his character's still intact here, still darker and edgier, but not some brooding emo stereotype that whispers every line. Take a good look, folks. This was the last time Shadow's character was good. Side note, they just fixed it. I wrote this script before Shadow Gens came out. My bad. Anyway, just like with Team Rose, spam the blue tornado, kill Shadow for a second time, and we're on to the next level. Okay, real quick aside, sorry, but this kinda irks me. This game was released in 2003, and I see a lot of people saying that the graphics are ass. Excuse me, but this game aged like wine, only trailing behind Wind Waker and maybe Mario Sunshine, only because the water was so nice in that game. Remember when people wanted realistic graphics back then? Well, this is what your beloved God of War looked like. And this was a super high-budget CG cutscene, so, you know. Just saying, give this game some damn credit for looking so good when it was made from scratch for 4 consoles on a new engine back when crap like this was popular. Naturally, our next location is a haunted castle. I'm very thankful for this game teaching me geography at a young age, because I never paid attention in school. No, guys, it goes beach, city, casino in the sky, desert, rainforest, ghost town, and battleship world. Still wondering how I failed geography. I think my teacher was just jealous of my knowledge, or maybe my beautiful eyes. So, Hang Castle is an awesome level, of course. The gimmick here is the upside-down mechanic. You hit these switches that flip the level upside down and find the terrain you covered earlier was designed from underneath, too. It's pretty magical considering the last level to do this was Crazy Gadget, and we know how people felt about that one. Something super cool that most people miss is the Eggman statue, which Sonic sure seems to think requires some therapy.
Eggman's got some serious problems. Look at that statue.
When flipped upside down, it reveals a dark, shadowy Metal Sonic statue. The game might have spilled the beans about this twist a billion times by now, but the imagery is still great. This is where you can abuse Tails to skip sections of the level, which I see as a plus. It might be against the rules, but it still requires skill, so it's warranted. Next up is Mystic Mansion. After traveling outside the haunted castle, you now infiltrate one giant, eerie mansion that seems to play mind tricks on you with its size and shape. These robot paintings turn real, this haunted minecart in the cave is dope, these spiderwebs being used as grind rails is just perfection, and this last section just mesmerizes me. I know it's just 3 multicolored water textures shaped into a sphere, but it's a really clever reuse of assets to make something unique. Oh hey look, it's Seaside Hill. People always seem to die in this homing attack section, and I don't know why. Well, no, that's a lie. I know exactly why. But they feel the need to spam the A button here. I've seen this in a lot of Let's Plays of Sonic games, and it's just something that they never really teach you. Take your time. Hold the A button after hitting each enemy for more airtime, you'll be fine. This level also does something really neat with the music. Depending on what section you're in, the song will start to loop the part that fits best. The regular mansion parts play the main theme. The minecart section plays the jazzy cool part. The wacky ending section plays this eerie heavy part with the arpeggiated synth bass and detuned bells. When people say Hero's soundtrack is mid, I know their favorite fast food restaurant is Burger King. And look, bad taste is fine, but in this house we eat Whataburger, okay? This game is often bashed as broken, when in reality it gives you every tool you need to make things easy. I think a better way to look at it is it's misleading. You're not told about the benefits of holding the A button after attacking, using the tornado to save yourself, how to use the rocket excel properly, or that holding down the B button on rails makes you gain speed downhill. But considering the amount of explaining this game already has to do with its insane, complex mechanics, I guess they just told you what they could without beating you over the head with tutorials. My only issue is, these are all things people seem to do in the adventure games without any problems, but say Heroes doesn't have, or is bad at. I think if people spend as much time with this game as they did with the previous titles, they'd have fewer problems with the controls. This is where we run into our second and last enemy gauntlet. They attempt to make things harder by throwing a bunch of huge enemies at you and take you to different areas of the map to fight them, but it's still match to win with Tails and Knuckles. I actually have a lot of fun here exploiting how overpowered level 2 Tails and Knuckles are. Just look at this mayhem.
Them all!
Eggman, or Eggman, repeats his line from Robot Carnival saying,
Those were the easy ones!
despite the fact that they were the hardest enemy types in the game, so, you know, kind of a fucking idiot.
What did you say? Now I'm really mad!
And so now we move on to the greatest set of levels in the game. No, the entire franchise.
You fools must all have a death wish. Witness this invincible battleship built by the hands of a genius. Its power unmatched throughout the universe.
All right, Eggman. Let's get this party started.
Where do I begin? Eggfleet starts with a kick-ass opening cinematic that gets you pumped to take on the challenge. We start on the edge of space, falling down to Earth as we land on and navigate Eggman's airships and blow them out of the sky. Every airship has some sort of fish motif, starting with these Mako gunships, mainly used as platforms and combat sections, to these softish battleships which you blow out of the sky, and Final Fortress, a giant whale shark marking the enormous flagship of his fleet. But I was always curious about this manta ray ship. I really wish it was part of the level, but I can imagine modeling it would have been a nightmare. That's why in Final Fortress you only see the ship in the distance as a PNG. The battleships alone prove why this level has outstanding design, landed on after each propeller segment, taking you down a long path where you can outrun Eggman's missiles and plow through the cannons with Knuckles. You climb to the top of it with Tails, and you rocket excel with Sonic to destroy the core and take down the ship. This is perfect design, utilizing all three characters to take down his fortress. This level is just the best example of what I love about Sonic. Rail grinding in space and killing enemies, but this time you're actually destroying giant airships. How was this level not in Generations? Seaside Hill is great and all, but when I think of 3D Sonic, I think of over-the-top style and spectacle. So, after Eggman stole his energy from the animals in his power plant, scammed the lower class with his casinos, shipped his ammo supplies across state lines with his bullet station, and even built a giant statue of himself to show his arrogance, we destroy all of his hard work with one quick rocket excel. What's worse is he definitely wasn't going to use these airships yet. Metal Sonic hijacked his hard work and tried taking over the world himself. I almost feel bad for Eggman in this game. He has a habit of being the most evil maniac, but still tugging on your heartstrings by the end of the game. However, I will never forgive him for stiffing the Chaotix. He deserved that beatdown.
As soon as I conquer the world, I will pay you.
And now all that's left is to navigate his floating fortress and face off with the perpetrator. This thing is massive, and while we spent the last level jumping from one ship to another, this level exclusively takes place on his giant fortress. I mean, just look at this thing. You can even see it in the intro and in the bullet station cutscene. This has to be the coolest setting for a final level I've ever seen. The level design here is immaculate, testing every skill you've learned up to this point, taking on a more vertical design where the better your quick thinking and character use, the higher path you stay on and faster you go. The top path usually consisting of rails to grind on and 1-ups to collect, and corridors to triangle jump through. The middle path being a balance of reward and punishment with small enemies to kill and more platforming to do, while the bottom path tends to have more of a plethora of large enemies and puzzles which take longer to complete. This is classic Sonic design to a T, and incentivizes replaying the level until you finally hit all those top paths. Throughout the stage, you hit these giant self-destruct switches, which always seemed strange to me. You'd think if you built a giant fortress this impenetrable, why would you put blow-up switches all over the place? Until you realize they're always at the end of different segments of the ship. So my thinking is, the idea is if Eggman saw Sonic coming, he would hit one of these switches to destroy a section of the ship so Sonic would fall with it, or not be able to navigate to the next section. I mean, that's the best I could come up with at least. Tails in the English dialogue says, "Wonder why it self-destructed," literally seconds after hitting one of the self-destruct switches. Unfortunately, this was a mistranslation from the original Japanese script, which said something more akin to, why would Eggman put self-destruct switches on his own ship? So, fair enough. My favorite aspect about this level is most of the slower enemy encounters can be cheesed or outright skipped completely. It's this kind of quick thinking that makes me really feel good at playing a video game. Save your Team Blast for the helmet robots in the last section. As level 2 Knuckles, you can just plow through the regular mechs, and Tails can make quick work of the Gundam-looking enemies. And as is tradition with Heroes, we move on to the final segment, where most people tend to game over and have to play the entire stage again. Here's where that holding B to go faster really comes into play. You have to switch rails at a quick pace to avoid these lasers. You could always use tails to fly over them if you feel too uncomfortable moving fast. Same goes for this Eggman eye laser at the end. I've heard so many people say you can't outrun it, but it's fairly easy if you keep your momentum. If not, then just fly up and wait for it to go away. Make your way to the last self-destruct switch and blow up Eggman's face for a second time to get to the goal ring. This is it, the final fight against what you think is Eggman. This may not be the final boss of the game, but it's certainly the final boss of each campaign, and you could just call it a wrap here if you wanted to. This boss can be very tricky for new players with some of his cheaper attacks. If you get too close, he'll hurt you. If you get too far away, he'll use his charge to hit you, which you can't avoid, unless you punch him with knuckles at the exact same time he hits you. He sends these slash attacks that come vertically and horizontally. Just take your time, jump over the flat ones, and try to keep an appropriate distance from him. All you really have to do here is get to level 2 tails and demolish him with Thundershoot until he's out. If you get tired of these cannons shooting at you, you can destroy them with knuckles, but that'll waste time and give you less of a chance to attack him before he keeps moving. And with that boss out of the way, we completed Team Sonic, ending with a cheesy cutscene where Sonic loses one ego point and Amy chases him into the sunset. Or smoke and flames from literal airships falling out of the sky. Don't they need tails to get down from here? Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. Or maybe this was the section the opening was showing. Maybe if Sonic can fall from the egg carrier just fine, then this wasn't anything to worry about. I just hope Big's okay. So while I found my playthrough of Team Sonic to be very enjoyable, with very few speed bumps impeding my fun, you're probably wondering how I feel about the rest of the game. This playthrough was essentially a quarter of the main game, so what else does Heroes have to offer? As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 teams, each with differing difficulty and layouts, but share the same 14 stages. I won't spend nearly as long covering these stories since we've already covered each stage and the level design. Let's start with Team Rose. They're essentially the easy mode, with stages about half the length of Team Sonic's, with little to no major enemy encounters that provide a challenge. I understand that Team Sonic can't be the easy mode, and that you wouldn't want to put Team Rose as the first selection on the main menu screen, but this means that most people will play through the normal difficulty before even finding out there's an easy mode. I can't help but think if they advertised the difficulty of each team better, it wouldn't be such an issue. I mean, you can press the Y button to let Omochao explain each team, but I don't think most first-time players are going to notice this. Team Rose begins with a new tutorial level, Seagate. This tutorial pisses me off, but not for the same reasons you might think. Yes, the constant stopping and starting for Omochao to explain the simplest of mechanics would drive anyone to lodge a GameCube controller through their TV. But there's a much more egregious flaw with this tutorial that I believe sets up new players for failure. They don't teach you how to do anything right. Aside from the basic moves, they try to sprinkle in tips for more advanced moves, and they get them all wrong. Like the Rocket Excel. They tell you to hold down the B button to build it up, and then release it to blast off with speed. Bullshit. I mentioned earlier, the best way this move works is to wait till your teammates are lined up, then press it again for a boost of speed. Sometimes it's even better to double tap it. If you just let go of B, you'll get this pathetic little push, and I think this is the reason most people hate this move. That aside, this tutorial doesn't teach you about rail grinding, what level ups actually do for each character, how to properly use the homing attack. With the sheer amount of tutorials in this game, it really irks me they don't explain these moves in detail, because most people just mash the button and call the game broken when, surprise, it doesn't work. I won't spend much more time here, the levels are the same, just much shorter. The story is just as non-existent as Team Sonic, and by the end the only accomplishment that was made was getting Froggy back. The only control differences to note here are that Team Rose and Team Chaotix can't perform the Lightspeed Dash, Tornado Attack, and have these bullcrap moves that halt your speed. With Team Sonic and Team Dark, pressing the B button as your speed character will make them do a kick slide that maintains your speed and accelerates you quickly. Team Rose has this pathetic little hammer swing, and Chaotix isn't much better with this throwing star. The power characters in these teams also have a belly flop move that I never found too useful, but I'm sure most people prefer it to the slippery punches from Knuckles. With Team Rose, the bosses remain the same, but their health bars are about half of what they were for the other teams, and they tend to throw fewer enemies at you. The team battles are exactly the same, however, broken and beaten in about 15 seconds. So let's push forward with Team Dark. This is essentially the hard mode of the game with slightly longer levels and more complex platforming. They also give you more enemies to defeat. Guys, not gonna lie, I think Team Dark has the best levels. The enemies can be annoying, but the added platforming challenge is exactly what I'm looking for with this game. Grand Metropolis being a perfect example, where they add this extra section before the end where it feels like one skill trick after another. Team Dark actually has a bit of a story, so I'll go over it quickly. The last time we saw Shadow, he fell to his death in SA2, so how is he back? The story begins with him being released from a capsule by Rouge, who's searching for Eggman's treasure. One of Eggman's mechs, E123 Omega, is on guard and tries to neutralize the threat, but ultimately fails, with Rouge bringing them together as a team for their mutual hatred of Eggman. Omega being pissed at Eggman for locking him away in his base, and Shadow seeking Eggman in search of his memory. Yeah, Shadow has amnesia, and the mystery of the game is whether he's the real Shadow brought back to life or a clone made by Eggman. Nothing gets answered in this game, so that's about all the story has to offer. All that said, I love Team Dark. Their dynamic is awesome, and Omega's easily my favorite character in the game. He oddly has more of a personality than most of the sentient characters, and even has some sass, being completely hell-bent on destroying Eggman and his inferior robots.
I am Omega, the ultimate E-Series robot. Enemies eliminated. Beaten by brute. How weak they must be.
When I replay Heroes, I tend to stick with Team Sonic or Team Dark, as their levels feel more full and have the best balance of challenge and platforming. Team Rose might be good for beginners, but replaying the tutorial level every time can be quite the inconvenience. That being said, what the hell is Team Chaotix? The Chaotix were originally introduced back in the 1995 32X game Knuckles Chaotix. It was a pretty poorly received game with a shoddy tethering mechanic that turned most players away. Interesting that they brought these three characters back for Heroes, but I couldn't be happier that they did. Espio, a dark, mysterious ninja chameleon, Vector, the brash, loudmouth crocodile, and Charmy, the naive, childish bee. What a combo. These guys are the perfect sitcom setup, being struggling detectives looking for work and trouble paying their bills. They receive an anonymous message from a distorted voice, hiring them to complete missions and save a mystery man from an undisclosed location. If you haven't figured it out by now, yeah, this is Eggman. After being locked up by Metal Sonic, Eggman hires the Chaotix to break him out so he can conquer the world and defeat Metal Sonic. This culminates in him being freed and refusing to pay them. Again, he deserved that beatdown. So, what makes their gameplay different than the other teams? Well, instead of shorter or longer levels, the Chaotix are purely mission-based. This means anything from collecting hermit crabs, defeating a certain amount of enemies in a stage, or literally just getting to the goal ring. Yeah, they must have been rushing this game at this point. The problem with these missions is that some range from being a cakewalk done in 2 minutes to an absolute test of your patience. I'm looking at you, Mystic Mansion. In the main level, you have to blow out every red torch. Some of them are hidden, and this level is huge. And if you miss even one, you have to go back to the beginning and aimlessly search for it again. Heroes also has secondary missions for each level to gain emblems. For Team Sonic, it's a time trial. For Team Dark, it's destroying a certain amount of enemies. And for Team Rose, you have to collect 200 rings. But for Team Chaotix, oh boy. Let's just say if the normal missions pissed you off, these will take 10 years off your life. In Mystic Mansion, they switch it up so you have to blow out every blue torch instead of the red ones. These are even more hidden and can be blatantly invisible in some areas. I've seen people take 30 minutes to beat this level. Yeah, Heroes did Eggman Land before Unleashed was even on the drawing board. I can totally understand why people hate playing as the Chaotix, and I really can't defend these levels. I don't mind them and generally don't have much trouble, but I totally get it, and if I play this game again, I usually avoid them. Oh yeah, as I mentioned, a huge complaint with this game is you need to play all 14 stages with all 4 teams to reach the last story. It's not as bad as having to play the game 10 times like in Shadow, but it's a bit much. I think if you genuinely like playing Heroes, it gives you a decent variation and a lot of content. I do prefer this to the shorter games like Colors, despite what most people think. As I said, the game was made in a time where there was no DLC, so what you get is what you get. I'd rather have extra content if I was bored than a 3-hour game. But that's not all you need to reach the last story. That's right, the Chaos Emeralds are brought back just for this game, for the gameplay and not just the story. During each stage you can collect these keys. Make it to the goal ring without losing a key and it takes you to the special stage. Act 1 is just a challenge for extra lives, but Act 2 is the Emerald Challenge. So you're probably wondering how I'm going to bend over backwards to defend these. Well, I'm not. They're a fun idea, but they really needed more time in the oven. It's a variation of the half-pipe special stages from Sonic 2 and 3D Blast. However, in Heroes, they biff the controls to the point where it's unplayable. You collect these colored orbs to build your boost meter, and you can hold down B to boost toward the emerald. I prefer to mash B, it's easier to control the characters that way, and you still move about the same speed. The main problem here is the combination of unwieldy, slippery controls and janky collision. Every time you hit a weird patch on the collision, you fall to a snail's pace, and it takes forever to build your speed back up. You basically need to play these over and over again to have a chance, and while in Sonic 2 it was purely skill, here it's a trial and error with a mix of luck. I can usually get these on the first try now, but that's after years of practice. The worst part is, if you miss the emerald, you have to play the entire level again just to get another try. This is hell for Mystic Mansion and Final Fortress, as they're the longest levels in the game. Definitely try to get these with Team Rose. Their stages are easier and shorter. It doesn't matter what team you use as long as you collect all 7 throughout your 4 playthroughs. And with all that done, you can finally get to the last story. That is, if you can find it. I lost my mind as a kid when it didn't pop up on the menu screen. Like, where the hell is it? Oh, it's over to the right. No indication. Just read the game's mind and scroll past what's shown. Okay, sure. The last story begins with each team rushing to the edge of Final Fortress to see the real villain standing over them. If it weren't already spoiled, this would have been an awesome reveal. But nonetheless, this scene is great. Metal Sonic stands atop the peak of Final Fortress before blowing Eggman's headquarters apart and using broken parts of the ship to transform his body. In the midst of transforming, the ancillary teams are tasked with damaging his health. Each team stands on a different pillar and attacks his core. If the core's blue, that means the speed character can't damage him, so you need to swap accordingly. Yellow is flight and red is power. This part of the fight isn't too exciting or difficult, but helps build tension for the final battle. Once Team Dark finishes him, he completes his transformation into Metal Overlord, a monstrosity of broken metal scaffolding and cables, in the same shape as a flying dragon. He takes off into the sky as Team Sonic begins their transformation with the emeralds. Yes, I know, Tails and Knuckles don't go super and just get these bubbles that enhance their attacks and allow them to fly endlessly, but this scene is still so fucking cool, giving us one of my favorite supersonic moments in the series. I just think he looks so good here. I mean, I really miss these more experimental models for Sonic. After Unleashed, he looks more and more sterile and commercialized compared to these wackier versions. So Team Supersonic blasts off into space to take down Metal Overlord and save the world. Of all the god monsters in early 3D Sonic, this is up there with Perfect Chaos and just how cool his design is. They both kick the Bio-Lizard's ass, no contest. Yeah, I said it, eat me. The Bio-Lizard looks stupid, especially when he was being probed by the Death Egg. The only way to damage Metal Sonic here is to use your Team Blast, which goes way harder than it needs to. To build your Team Blast meter, you have to parry his attacks, using the Rocket Excel to blast through his ice crystals, Tails to thundershoot these ice blocks that can trap your characters, and Knuckles to break these Egg Fleet ships he picks up and hurls at you. After 5 Team Blasts, the battle's done, with Sonic making one more snarky comment before your final ranking.
Too bad it's all over! For you!
I do appreciate this is the only rank screen where they stay completely quiet after you see your letter rank. We descend to one of Eggman's ships as his armada is nearly completely destroyed, Metal returning to his original design and hinting at a rematch in the future as each team goes their separate ways. And that's Sonic Heroes. I never intended to make an hour-long video essay on this game, but I really wish more people would give it a chance. I understand the game has many flaws, I mean it's a Sonic game after all, but when I see the avalanche of love for SA2, I can't help but compare it to Heroes. I really think if you love the adventure titles, you should give Heroes another shot. Experiment with the controls and immerse yourself in the beautiful world they build. I think if future Sonic games want to borrow motifs, they should look to this game more. Before I end this already lengthy video, I want to rapid fire a few things I missed, real quick. When you complete all A and B missions with A ranks, you unlock Super Hard Mode.
The Super Hard Mode. Dang, it's called Super Hard Mode? It's not just called Hard Mode?
This is essentially Team Dark stages, but slightly harder with Team Sonic and no bosses. This is my favorite way to play the game. When collecting all emblems, you unlock media and multiplayer modes. The multiplayer in this game is underrated and just barely trails behind SA2 in fun and variety.
Oh, shoot, no! You picked the shortest one! I'm not the goat for that. Hey, you missed!
This game has outstanding style, amazing art direction and music. Ocean Palace, Power Plant, Bingo Highway, Bullet Station, and Egg Fleet are banger stage themes. The vocal themes are amazing too. The main theme, Sonic Heroes, is an upbeat Crush 40 track with unique chord changes and one of the catchiest hooks of all time. Sonic Heroes. final boss theme, What I'm Made Of, is arguably the best Crush 40 song in the series. The themes for each team are also awesome, This Machine and Team Chaotix being my favorites. Ryan Drummond voices Sonic for his last 3D performance before the 4Kids cast replaced everyone, and he does phenomenal. Him and Scott Dreyer as Knuckles are fantastic, and I really miss this voice cast. This game also has my favorite design for Sonic. His model has perfect proportions, and I just love this deep blue color, later replaced by smoother edges and lighter blue, which just doesn't look as good to me. It's actually confirmed by Scott Dreyer that Knuckles does say shit and not shift.
Shift, rock, shift. Is shift, rock, yeah!
And the reason that was the hardest line for me is because back in the day, they did not want us to swear. We weren't allowed to swear, but one of them speaks, the interpreter speaks up and says, you know, we have a question for you. And they said, would you feel comfortable making that F of shift as soft as you can? We want it to be shift, but we want people to wonder if you're swearing. So it's intentional.
But they had to say it was shift for the game. I want more final levels like Egg Fleet and Final Fortress. This is what separates Sonic from Mario. I mean, a castle's cool and all, but a floating air fortress as a final level is exactly the thing I expect from a series this over the top. And I think that about does it. I probably missed a lot, but I won't go on forever. This is undoubtedly my favorite game of all time, and I hope I've at least convinced some people to go back and give it another shot. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end. If you haven't by now, please show me support by subscribing and checking out my other content. And remember, I'm not a Sonic channel. See you guys next time.